deal, and he was supposed to play Lincoln, but he couldn't because he's got AIDS.
Hey! What are you doing out here? Dennis, get away from him!
In Boston, 32,000 angry letters flooding a TV network before a show even aired. That's what happened to one sitcom on our list. We're uncovering the top 16 comedies from the 70s and 80s that faced bans and outrage for tackling topics that were considered totally off-limits, from a character's lifestyle to a family's personal health decisions.
Well, labels don't tell you nothing. I'll tell you what this is. This is a save-your-home alarm system.
1. All in the Family. Let's start with the king of controversial comedies, a show that threw a grenade into the living rooms of 1970s America. All in the Family was about Archie Bunker, a loud, prejudiced, and grumpy working-class guy from Queens, New York. He lived with his sweet but simple wife Edith, his forward-thinking daughter Gloria, and his liberal son-in-law Mike, who he famously called Meathead. The whole point of the show was the clash between Archie's old-fashioned backward ideas and the changing world around him. The controversy was Archie himself. To put it mildly, he used words and expressed opinions that had never ever been heard on television before. He used slurs and stereotypes for nearly every group of people you can imagine. The show's creator, Norman Lear, wanted to make fun of bigotry by showing how ridiculous it was. He hoped that by having America laugh at Archie, they would also be laughing at prejudice itself. But not everyone saw it that way. The backlash was immediate and huge. The network that aired the show, CBS, received thousands upon thousands of angry phone calls and complaint letters after the first few episodes. Many people were horrified. They thought the show was promoting the very thing it was supposed to be making fun of. In fact, some local CBS TV stations around the country were so scared of the public's reaction that they refused to air the first few episodes, or they chose to play them late at night when fewer people would be watching. The show survived, of course, and became one of the most beloved sitcoms of all time, but it started its life by making a whole lot of people very angry. From a dad whose nasty words caused a whole lot of trouble, we moved to a mom whose very personal choice started a firestorm that was even bigger. 2. Maude.
Life is just a bowl of cherries. Do you know who wrote that song? A deranged fruit peddler.
If Archie Bunker was the grumpy king of controversy, his cousin-in-law Maude Findlay was the loud liberal queen. Maude was a spin-off of All in the Family, starring the brilliant B. Arthur. Maude was the total opposite of Archie. She was a proud, outspoken feminist who was on her fourth husband and wasn't afraid to speak her mind about any political or social issue. The show was famous for tackling tough topics, but one episode in its very first season went further than any show had gone before. The episode was called Maude's Dilemma. In it, Maude, who was in her late 40s, discovers that she is unexpectedly pregnant. This was a huge shock, and she and her husband spend 2 full episodes agonizing over what to do. In the end, Maude decides to have a procedure to end the pregnancy. You see, this episode aired in November of 1972, just 2 months before the famous Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision made that procedure legal across the country. The public reaction was explosive. A mind-blowing 20,000 protest letters were sent to the network. Religious groups and conservative organizations called for boycotts of the show and the companies that advertised on it. The pressure was so intense that dozens of local network affiliates refused to air the 2-part episode. Many of the show's biggest sponsors got scared and pulled their commercials. What many overlooked is that the show's creators just wanted to show a middle-aged woman making a difficult decision, but for many in America, it was a step way too far. Maude's single episode created a storm that lasted for months, but our next show was so controversial from the get-go that people were protesting it before they even saw a single scene. 3. Soap.
You're different. Well, how?
How? Like Friday night when we went out for dinner? You asked for a table instead of a booth? I mean, you spent the whole meal talking to those people next to us, and then you tell me, I have a headache.
Imagine a show causing a national panic before the first episode even hits the airwaves. That was the crazy story of Soap. This show was a wild parody of daytime soap operas. It followed the lives of two wacky sisters and their chaotic families, the wealthy Tates and the working-class Campbells. The show was designed to be over the top, with storylines involving mobsters, nutty relatives, and even alien abductions. But one character in particular had people up in arms. That character was Jody Dallas, played by a young Billy Crystal. Jody was one of the first openly gay main characters on American television. He was funny, kind, and a core part of the family. But in 1977, this was a huge deal. Many people were not ready to see a gay character on a primetime comedy show. The thing nobody tells you is that news about Jody's character leaked to the public months before the show was set to debut. The result was an absolute avalanche of outrage. Conservative and religious groups organized a massive letter-writing campaign. Before the show even aired its first episode, the network, ABC, received an astonishing 32,000 complaint letters. Protesters demanded that the show be banned from television entirely. The pressure campaign worked to a degree. Several major sponsors pulled their advertising before the show even started. Some local ABC stations were so nervous that they refused to air it. The network even caved to the pressure and had its own censors heavily edit the first few episodes to tone down the adult themes. While Soap shocked people with its modern characters, the next show on our list, a popular spin-off from a classic, got into some serious hot water for the old-fashioned way its main character talked about other people. 4. The Jeffersons.
Helen told me about Louise. We were pretty worried about her, so I came down to see if I could help.
Oh, you can help. You can help me look through these books.
Right.
We're moving on up to the East Side. The Jeffersons was a hugely important and successful spin-off from All in the Family. It followed George and Louise Wheezy Jefferson, Archie Bunker's former neighbors, as they became rich from their dry cleaning business and moved into a fancy apartment in Manhattan. The show was celebrated for showing a successful, wealthy black family, which was a big deal for television at the time. The comedy came from the hot-headed, ambitious George, clashing with his down-to-earth wife Wheezy and their sophisticated neighbors. But not all things are what they seem. The controversy came from the main character himself, George Jefferson. Just like his old neighbor Archie, George had a bit of a big mouth and a habit of judging people. He was often just as prejudiced as Archie, only in different ways. He was suspicious of white people and often made fun of them. One of the most controversial parts of the show was George's constant insults toward his neighbors, Tom and Helen Willis, who were an interracial couple. He would call Tom a honky and make jokes about their marriage. This did not go over well with everyone. While some saw it as just flipping the script on Archie Bunker, other groups, including the NAACP, which is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, voiced serious concerns. They worried that George's character was promoting negative stereotypes and that his constant jabs at the Willises were sending the wrong message. The criticism was so pointed that the show's producers eventually had to have conversations with the writers, and in later seasons they toned down George's harshest insults, a clear sign that the complaints had hit their mark. George Jefferson's sharp words got the show in trouble, but on our next show, it was the main character's ethnic jokes and grumpy attitude that had viewers and even TV stations complaining. 5. Sanford and Son.
Yeah, it's a top quality black and white portable.
Pop, you promised me you wasn't gonna get involved in those shady deals.
It wasn't no shady deal. I bought it right out in the middle of the pool hall.
It's the big one, Elizabeth. I'm coming to join you. If you were watching TV in the 70s, you definitely heard that line. Sanford and Son was a monster hit starring the legendary comedian Red Fox as Fred G. Sanford, a cranky old junk dealer living in the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles. The show was about his constant bickering and scheming with his calm and patient adult son, Lamont. Fred was hilarious, famous for faking heart attacks to get his way and insulting everyone around him. And that was exactly where the controversy came from. Fred Sanford had an opinion on everybody, and it usually wasn't a nice one. Much like Archie Bunker, he threw around ethnic slurs and made fun of people based on their background. He had a particular dislike for his Puerto Rican neighbor, Julio, and would often make jokes at his expense. He also had plenty of not-so-nice things to say about his sister-in-law, Aunt Esther, who he often compared to an animal. While most people found it funny and just part of Fred's grumpy character, the constant name-calling was too much for some. Believe it or not, the show faced a lot of viewer complaints about Fred's language. The backlash was especially strong in certain parts of the country. Many local TV stations, particularly in the South, felt that the humor was in poor taste. As a result, they would often edit out the most offensive lines, or in some cases, refuse to air certain episodes altogether. It was a classic case of what was considered hilarious in one part of the country being seen as offensive in another. Fred Sanford made fun of just about everyone he met, but the next show on our list created a whole different kind of awkward situation with 3 roommates and one giant, ongoing misunderstanding. 6. Three's Company.
Takes me 2 weeks to get a date with Sharon Gordon, and I have to stand her up.
I'd take Sharon to lunch for you, Jack, but my teeth are still loose from our last date.
Come and knock on our door. Three's Company was one of the most popular and most silly sitcoms of the late 70s and early 80s. The story was simple. A young man named Jack Tripper needs a place to live and ends up moving in with 2 single women, Janet and Chrissy. But there was a catch. Their grumpy landlord, Mr. Roper, would never allow a single man to live with 2 single women. So, to get around the rule, they tell him that Jack is gay. He's not, of course, and this huge misunderstanding was the engine for almost every joke on the show. The controversy was twofold. First, the entire gay ruse premise made a lot of people uncomfortable. Even though Jack wasn't actually gay, the show was full of jokes that played on stereotypes. Second, the show was famous for its suggestive humor. To put it mildly, it was loaded with innuendos, double meanings, and jokes about the characters' private lives. The female characters were often dressed in revealing outfits, and the comedy frequently revolved around misunderstandings related to adult topics. This kind of humor drove religious groups and conservative family organizations absolutely wild. They accused the show of being immoral and promoting a loose lifestyle. The network, ABC, received a steady stream of parental complaints and letters from viewers who were outraged by the constant jiggle and bedroom jokes. The pressure was so consistent that the network had to walk a fine line. They knew they had a massive hit on their hands, but they also had to keep the censors and the public happy. As a result, scripts were often adjusted to make sure the jokes were suggestive, but never too direct. The humor in Three's Company was all about hints and winks, but the next show on our list faced serious criticism from its own cast members, who felt the comedy was turning into a cartoon. 7. Good Times Hangin' In and Jivin'.
Mama, could it be possible that I'm turning you off? Move it, move it!
Good Times was another groundbreaking sitcom from producer Norman Lear, and it was a spin-off of his other hit show, Maude. The series centered on the Evans family, a poor but proud black family living in a public housing project in Chicago. The show was praised for tackling serious issues like poverty, unemployment, and crime, all while showing the strength and love of a close-knit family led by parents Florida and James Evans. But as the show went on, the focus started to shift to their oldest son, JJ, played by comedian Jimmy Walker. JJ was known for his goofy antics, his lanky walk, and his catchphrase, "Dinamite." He quickly became the show's breakout star and a national sensation. Here's the kicker. not everyone was happy about it. The show's main stars, Esther Roll, who played the Mother Florida, and John Amos, who played the Father James, grew to dislike the direction the show was taking. They felt that JJ's character had become a buffoon, a cartoonish stereotype that took away from the show's original purpose of portraying a realistic and dignified family. The situation got so bad that John Amos was let go from the show after the 3rd season because of his disagreements with the producers. A few years later, Esther Roll became so unhappy that she publicly criticized the show and even quit for an entire season. She only agreed to come back after the producers promised to make JJ's character more responsible. It was a rare and shocking case of a show's own stars leading the protest against it. An actor protesting their own show is a wild story, but our next show dealt with a topic so serious and scary that it was the parents at home who started protesting. 8. Different Strokes.
Well, I know my friend Dudley's not going to let me down. Huh?
Sure, I'll have some more. You gonna be a chicken, Arnold? Well, okay. I'll have just one sip.
What you talking about, Willis? That famous line came from the classic sitcom, Different Strokes. The show was about 2 young black brothers from Harlem, Arnold and Willis, who are adopted by a rich white millionaire named Philip Drummond after their mother passes away. They move into his fancy Park Avenue penthouse with his daughter Kimberly, and their lives are changed forever. The show was mostly lighthearted, getting its laughs from the culture clash and Arnold's adorable, funny lines. But Different Strokes was also one of the first sitcoms to become famous for its very special episodes, where the show would pause the comedy to deal with a serious issue. One of these episodes, a 2-parter called The Bicycle Man, became one of the most controversial episodes of the 80s. In the story, Arnold and his friend Dudley meet a friendly man who runs the local bike shop. He seems nice at first, but it quickly becomes clear that he is a dangerous predator who is trying to harm children. The episode was incredibly dark and graphic for a family sitcom. It showed the man trying to trick the boys with games and treats, and it was very direct about his sinister intentions. While the show's goal was to teach kids about the dangers of talking to strangers, many parents were horrified. They felt the topic was way too scary and intense for young viewers. Parent groups called for the episode to be banned, arguing that it was too disturbing for a primetime comedy. The network, NBC, knew it was handling a sensitive topic, so it aired the episode with special warnings for parents and even set up a hotline for viewers who had questions. A show trying to protect kids from danger is one thing, but what about a popular comedy that seemed to be making fun of a very real and ongoing war? 9. Massoon.
Just yesterday, as I was elbow deep in my 6th bowel resection, it occurred to me, what this hospital really needs is a good 100-yard dash man.
Now we head to the 4077th Mobile Army Surgical Hospital, the setting for one of the most acclaimed television shows of all time, MASH. The show followed a team of doctors and nurses stationed in South Korea during the Korean War. Led by the brilliant but wisecracking surgeon Hawkeye Pierce, they used humor and pranks to cope with the daily horror of war. The show was a unique blend of hilarious comedy and heartbreaking drama, and its finale remains the most watched scripted television episode in American history. But when the show first started in 1972, America was still deeply embroiled in a very different conflict, the Vietnam War. What many overlooked is that the show's creators used the Korean War setting as a way to comment on the Vietnam War. The show had a very strong anti-war message. The main characters constantly mocked military authority, complained about the government, and questioned why they were even there in the first place. For them, the only thing that mattered was saving lives, not fighting a war. This did not sit well with everyone, to say the least. Many viewers, especially military veterans and their families, were offended by the show's tone. They felt it was disrespectful to the armed forces and that it made a mockery of the sacrifices that soldiers were making. Protests were organized by veteran groups, and the network received complaints that the show was unpatriotic. During the height of the Vietnam War, some local TV stations were hesitant to air a show that was so openly critical of the military, fearing backlash from their local communities. Making fun of the Army caused a stir in the 70s, but our next show, set in a regular suburban home, sparked a real-life boycott that cost the network a fortune in advertising. 10. Married with Children.
Oh, I gotta do something to shake these birthday blues. I know. Give me money. I'm gonna shop till you drop.
Love and marriage go together like a horse and carriage. That was the theme song, but the show Married with Children was about a family that seemed to hate the idea of both. The series followed the miserable life of Al Bundy, a cranky women's shoe salesman, his lazy wife Peggy, his ditzy daughter Kelly, and his not-so-smart son Bud. The Bundys were the opposite of every happy sitcom family on TV. They were rude, crude, and constantly insulted each other. The show's humor was built on being offensive. There were endless jokes about Al's pathetic life, Peggy's refusal to do housework, and the intimate details of their marriage. And it was this crude humor that sparked one of the most famous boycott attempts in TV history. In 1989, a woman from Michigan named Terry Rakolta was watching the show with her kids and was so horrified by what she saw that she decided to take action. She started a one-woman letter-writing campaign contacting all of the show's major sponsors. She complained about the show's lewd jokes and anti-family themes. And believe it or not, it worked. Her campaign gained national attention, and several major companies, including Coca-Cola and Procter & Gamble, got nervous and pulled their ads. In total, at least 6 major sponsors dropped out. The network, Fox, was put in a tough spot. They stood by the show, but the controversy caused them to delay airing certain episodes and to be more careful in the future. Terry Rakolta's crusade made the show even more famous, proving that sometimes even bad press is good press. A mom from Michigan almost took down the Bundy family, but our next show caused a national stir with a simple kiss that many TV stations across the country refused to air. Roseanne.
You read my mind. Huh?
Roseanne was a massive hit because it felt real. It was about the Connors, a working-class family from Illinois just trying to get by. Roseanne and Dan were overweight, always worried about money, and had 3 sarcastic kids. Unlike the perfect families in other sitcoms, the Connors yelled, burped, and talked about real-life problems. The show was praised for its honesty and for tackling subjects that other comedies wouldn't touch. In a 1994 episode called Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the show decided to push the envelope further than ever before. In the storyline, Roseanne's sister, Jackie, befriends a new character named Sharon, who is a lesbian. They all go out to a local bar, and Sharon gives Roseanne a quick, friendly kiss on the lips. In today's world, it would be no big deal at all. But in the mid-90s, a kiss between 2 women on a primetime family sitcom was seen as shocking. The network, ABC, was incredibly nervous about it. They threatened to not air the episode at all. The show's star, Roseanne Barr, had to fight hard to keep the kiss in the show. When the episode finally did air, the controversy exploded. Many local ABC affiliates across the country, especially in the South and Midwest, refused to show it. Sponsors threatened to pull their advertising. The network was flooded with complaints from viewers who felt the moment was inappropriate for family television. It became a major event in the culture wars of the 1990s, all over a simple 3-second kiss. A kiss caused a nationwide panic, but on the next show, it was simply 4 older ladies talking about their personal lives that made some people deeply uncomfortable. 12. The Golden Girls.
3rd, 1967. George, just back from Dallas, surprised me with the most beautiful diamond earrings.
Thank you for being a friend. The Golden Girls was a sitcom unlike any other. It was about 4 older single women, Dorothy, Rose, Blanche, and Sophia, living together in a house in Miami. They were either widowed or divorced, and they spent their days eating cheesecake and swapping hilarious and often biting stories about their lives, their families, and their relationships. The show was a massive hit, proving that comedy about women over 50 could be just as funny and popular as shows about young families. The controversy was subtle but significant. The show dared to portray older women as vibrant, active people with rich inner lives. The character of Blanche Devereaux, in particular, was famously outspoken about her many romantic encounters. The ladies openly discussed dating, intimacy, and relationships in a way that had never been seen on TV for characters their age. You see, this made some more conservative viewers very uncomfortable, but the show didn't stop there. In what was a very brave move for the 1980s, the Golden Girls also tackled the HIV and AIDS crisis head-on. In one episode, Rose is terrified that she may have contracted HIV from a blood transfusion. The episode treated the topic with incredible sensitivity and compassion, but the very mention of the illness on a comedy show scared a lot of people during a time of great public fear and misinformation. Because of the adult themes and frank discussions, some minor edits were made to the show when it went into syndication, toning down the raciest jokes for daytime audiences. The Golden Girls talked about mature topics with class and humor, but our next show got in trouble for a premise that some critics thought was just plain silly and insulting. 13. Bosom Buddies.
Freeze! Who is it? Up against the couch!
Before he was a 2-time Oscar-winning movie star, Tom Hanks was the star of a goofy sitcom called Bosom Buddies. The show was about 2 young guys, Kip and Henry, who work in an advertising agency. They desperately need a cheap place to live, and they find the perfect apartment in a hotel for women. The only problem is that it's for women only. So, to get the apartment, they disguise themselves as women, creating the alter egos of Buffy and Hildegard. The comedy came from them trying to keep their true identities a secret from their female neighbors and their boss. The entire premise of 2 men dressing up as women was the source of the controversy. But not all things are what they seem. While some religious groups found the cross-dressing premise morally questionable, a lot of the criticism actually came from a different place: feminist groups. These critics argued that the show was built on old-fashioned and insulting gender stereotypes. They felt that the characters of Buffy and Hildegard were one-dimensional caricatures of women, and that the show was making fun of what it means to be female. The show's humor often relied on the idea that Kip and Henry had to learn how to act like women, which involved stereotypical behaviors. The network, ABC, was sensitive to this criticism, and over the show's short 2-season run, they tried to tone down some of the more over-the-top aspects of the premise, focusing more on the guys' friendship and less on the dresses and wigs. 2 guys pretending to be women was one thing, but the next show on our list tackled a very real and terrifying issue for women, and some people thought it went way too far for a comedy. 14. Too Close for Comfort.
But if Monroe is so special, why do you need both arrangements? It's not like you're trapped in a marriage.
Muriel, there are other ways to be trapped.
Too Close for Comfort was a family sitcom starring Ted Knight, who was famous for playing Ted Baxter on The Mary Tyler Moore Show. In this series, he played Henry Rush, a gentle and kind cartoonist. He worked from home, which gave him plenty of time to worry about his two beautiful, grown-up daughters, Jackie and Sarah, who lived in the apartment downstairs. The show's humor came from Henry being an overprotective, meddling dad who was always getting involved in his daughters' lives. For the most part, the show was a light and fluffy comedy, but it shocked audiences with a very special episode that dealt with a horrifyingly serious topic. In an episode titled, "For Every Man There's Two Women," the daughter, Sarah, goes to a party and is the victim of a terrible assault by two men. It was an extremely dark storyline for a sitcom, and the show tried to handle it with care. However, the episode sparked a significant backlash. Many viewers and critics felt that the show had trivialized a very serious crime by trying to fit it into a half-hour comedy format. They argued that the serious topic of assault had no place in a sitcom, and that the episode's resolution, which happened way too quickly, was unrealistic and insulting to real-life survivors. Viewer petitions were started, and women's groups complained that the show was handling a deeply traumatic event in a clumsy and inappropriate way, proving that even with good intentions, some topics are just too heavy for a laugh track. A serious topic handled clumsily is a big problem, but the next show tried to handle a major public health crisis, and it scared people so much they didn't want to watch. 15. Mr. Belvedere.
I don't want to lose all my friends. I mean, Danny doesn't have any anymore, and if people find out I've been hanging around with him, pretty soon I won't have any either.
The sitcom. Mr. Belvedere was about a proper and highly intelligent English butler, Lynn Belvedere, who takes a job as a housekeeper for a chaotic American family, the Owenses, in a suburb of Pittsburgh. The comedy came from the clash between Mr. Belvedere's sophisticated, old-world ways and the messy, modern life of the American family. At the end of each episode, Mr. Belvedere would write in his journal, offering a wise lesson about the day's events. The show often dealt with family issues, but in 1989, it aired an episode that was incredibly daring and controversial for its time. The episode was called Wesley's Friend, and it focused on the youngest son, Wesley. He learns that one of his close friends has contracted HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, after receiving a blood transfusion. His friend is then bullied and shunned by other kids at school who are afraid they will get sick just by being near him. This was during the height of the AIDS crisis in the 1980s, a time filled with widespread fear, panic, and misinformation. The very idea of featuring a child with HIV on a family sitcom was shocking to many people. The network, ABC, was extremely worried about how the public would react. Many parent groups were concerned that the topic was too mature and frightening for children. The fear was so intense that some local TV stations got cold feet and chose to delay the episode, airing it at a later time or not at all, because they were worried about scaring away both viewers and advertisers. A family show tackling a health crisis was one thing, but our next show got into trouble for the very foundation of its comedy, the sometimes uncomfortable clash between two different cultures. 16. Chico and the Man.
Ed, I got the tube inflated.
And that's not all you got inflated.
Looking good. That was the catchphrase made famous by the sitcom Chico and the Man. The show was set in a rundown garage in East Los Angeles and centered on the unlikely friendship between two men. The man was Ed Brown, a bitter, aging, and prejudiced white guy who was set in his ways. Chico was a young, optimistic Chicano man who wouldn't take no for an answer and ended up getting a job working for Ed. The whole show was built on the racial and generational clash between the two of them. The controversy was baked right into the show's premise. Ed Brown was constantly making racist jokes and using slurs to describe Chico and other people in the neighborhood. While the show's goal was to show how their friendship could overcome prejudice, the constant barrage of insults was too much for many people. Hispanic and Latino advocacy groups protested the show from its very first season. They argued that the series was promoting negative stereotypes and that the racial humor was offensive. The backlash was so significant that the network, NBC, had to respond. The show's star, a young comedian named Freddie Prinze, who played Chico, even spoke about it in interviews, acknowledging the complaints but defending the show's intentions. After the first season, the producers made a conscious effort to soften Ed's character and edit out the harshest slurs and jokes. It was a clear sign that the public protests had forced the network to re-evaluate the line between edgy comedy and outright offense.